There is a moment that happens in millions of American households, and it happens so quietly that most people do not recognize it for what it is. A teenager sits across from a financial aid officer, or a parent co-signs a document at a bank, and in that moment, before a single class has been attended, before a single credential has been earned, the next 20 years of that young person's financial life are already spoken for. The average student loan balance at graduation is $37,000. At current interest rates, the monthly payment on that balance stretches across a decade or more, and it begins 30 days after graduation. Regardless of whether the job materialized, regardless of whether the degree produced what the brochure promised, regardless of whether the 18-year-old who signed the paperwork had any real basis for evaluating whether the trade was sound. $1.7 trillion. That is the total currently owed by 45 million Americans who were handed that same document at 18 and told it was an investment. The Pew Research Center found that 1 in 5 of those borrowers is over 50 years old and still paying at 50 for a decision made before they were old enough to rent a car. I have spent 3 years working through a set of handwritten ledgers belonging to a man named Ezekiel, a farmer in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, whose financial records run from 1887 through 1931. In 44 years of entries documenting every significant economic event in his household and community, there is no student debt column. There is no educational loan. There is no record of a child entering adulthood owing more than they owned. What there is, recorded in ink across those pages with the same quiet precision as crop yields and equipment costs, is something the modern financial industry has never found a way to replicate: a structured system for building a child's financial foundation from birth, delivering it complete at the start of adult life, and doing it without a single institution collecting interest on the transfer. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly how that system worked, why the 3 components Ezekiel documented: the MIT gift, the Lehrzeit fund, and the transfer protocol buried in his 3rd ledger, produce outcomes so different from what American education financing delivers that the comparison is almost uncomfortable. And you will understand why that knowledge has never appeared in a single financial literacy curriculum taught in any American school. Stay with me. That question, what if the model itself was the problem, is what Ezekiel's ledger answers across 44 years of unbroken record, not with argument, with math. What the Amish understood about preparing children for financial life is not a parenting philosophy. It is a structured economic program running in parallel with childhood itself, designed to produce one specific outcome by a specific age: a young adult who owns productive assets, carries no debt, and possesses skills the market will pay for indefinitely. That outcome is so different from what American institutional education produces that the comparison, once you make it clearly, makes the $1.7 trillion feel less like an accident of individual choices and more like the predictable result of a system optimized from the beginning for someone else's benefit. The foundation of the Amish approach to children and money begins with a concept that has no clean English equivalent: MIT gift. In the Amish tradition, MIT gift is not a gift in the casual sense. It is a structured, planned capital transfer. The financial endowment a household begins building for each child at birth and delivers in full at the moment the child establishes an independent household. Not at graduation, not contingent on academic performance or institutional approval. At the moment of economic independence, whenever that arrives and however it looks. Ezekiel's ledger contains MIT gift accumulation entries for each of his children beginning in their earliest years, and small contributions recorded with the same consistency as crop yields and equipment maintenance, building across 2 decades into the capital base that launched each of them without debt, without dependence, and without a repayment schedule attached to the start of their adult lives. The architecture of that capital transfer is what separates it from the vague American notion of saving for your kids. The MIT gift in Ezekiel's records was not cash sitting in an account waiting to be spent on tuition. It was productive assets, a defined parcel of land, a share in equipment, a quantity of livestock, a position in the community's Bruderschaft lending circle. Assets that generated returns from the moment of transfer, not a head start on an obstacle course someone else designed. A running start on ground the family already knew, with tools already in hand. The contrast with the American college funding model is structural, not philosophical. The dominant American approach to preparing children financially is to borrow against their future productivity, to purchase a credential that is supposed to increase that future productivity, enough to repay the borrowing and still come out ahead. The actuarial assumption embedded in that model, that a degree reliably produces enough income premium to justify its full cost, was questionable 20 years ago and has been progressively undermined by credential inflation, wage stagnation in degree-required fields, and the compounding burden of interest on loans originated before the borrower has ever held a full-time job. The Georgetown Center on Education and the Workforce published data in 2023 showing that 30% of workers with associate degrees out-earn workers with bachelor degrees in the same occupation. That number is not an argument against education. It is an argument against the assumption that the credential alone justifies the debt required to obtain it. The Amish model makes no such assumption and requires no such gamble. It transfers proven, tangible assets that produce returns regardless of what the credential market decides to value next decade, regardless of which industries contract, and regardless of interest rate cycles that were not foreseeable when the child was born. The asset does not depreciate because an employer stopped valuing the major it came from. Here is where the mathematics become concrete enough to be uncomfortable. The average American family that sends a child to a 4-year public university, tuition, room, board, books, and associated costs, spends or borrows approximately $120,000. If instead that $120,000 were deployed at the moment of the child's economic independence as a down payment on income-producing land, as seed capital for a trade-based enterprise, or as the founding contribution to a community lending circle position, the compounding trajectory of those two outcomes over the following 30 years is not close. One produces a credential whose market value is determined entirely by forces outside the holder's control. The other produces an asset whose value is determined by the holder's own labor, judgment, and stewardship. Ezekiel understood this not as financial theory, but as observable, documented fact across multiple generations, in those same ledgers. Now, here is the turn in this story that I need you to hold carefully, because it is the part most people misapply. The Amish do not avoid education. That framing is wrong and worth correcting directly. What they avoid is the specific institutional model that converts education into debt before the student has any evidence that the debt is justified. Amish children receive intensive, structured instruction from birth, not in classrooms designed to produce credentialed employees, but in productive skills whose market value is immediate, durable, and independent of any hiring committee's preferences. Woodworking, construction, agriculture, animal husbandry, textile production, small-scale manufacturing, financial stewardship within the community lending system. By 14 or 15, an Amish child is not a dependent consumer of educational services. They are a net economic contributor to their household. The skills they hold are not theoretical. They are billable today. They will be billable in 30 years. And no accreditation body can revoke them. No employer can devalue them through a policy change. And no interest rate cycle can make them more expensive to carry than they were the day they were acquired. The behavioral economics research on skill acquisition and financial resilience, from longitudinal studies at Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality and the University of Michigan, consistently shows that individuals who enter adulthood with demonstrated productive skills and tangible assets accumulate wealth at significantly higher rates over their lifetimes than individuals who enter adulthood with credentials and debt, even when the credentialed individuals earn higher initial incomes. The early income advantage of the degree narrows, then reverses, as the debt service compounds and the asset base of the skill holder grows unencumbered. The crossover point occurs somewhere in the mid-30s, precisely the A4 decade when most Americans are trying to buy a home and build the financial foundation that the Amish had already handed their children a decade earlier. And now we reach the entries in Ezekiel's third ledger that I want to be precise about, because they document something I had not seen described anywhere before I found it recorded in pencil in the margins of those pages. The Amish practice, what the community called a Lehrzeit contribution, a learning time fund maintained not by the child's parents alone, but by the entire district. Every household in the Gemeinde contributed a small defined amount annually into a collective pool designated specifically for skills apprenticeship. When a young person showed aptitude in a particular trade, blacksmithing, millwork, textile production, building, the Lehrzeit Fund covered the cost of placing them with a master practitioner for an extended period of intensive instruction. No tuition, no debt, no interest. The community invested collectively in the productive capacity of its youngest members, because every skilled young adult who entered the economy debt-free and producing was a direct return on that collective investment. The annual contribution per household to the Lehrzeit Fund in Ezekiel's records, between 60 and 90 cents per year in 1890s dollars, approximately $30 to $40 in today's purchasing power. Per household, per year. That is the community's annual investment in the next generation's financial independence. Compare it to the $30,000 average annual cost of a public university education today, and sit with that ratio for a moment. The Lehrzeit system did not produce worse outcomes. It produced young adults with no debt, immediate productive capacity, and a community infrastructure already in place to support their first years of independent economic life. The modern equivalent exists and is legal in all 50 states. Trade apprenticeship programs, registered under the National Apprenticeship Act, allow individuals to earn, while acquiring certified skills with no tuition and no debt, originated before a single dollar has been earned. The Department of Labor currently registers over 27,000 active apprenticeship programs, covering fields from advanced manufacturing and healthcare to information technology and financial services. The average registered apprentice earns $70,000 annually upon program completion, with no student loan balance, no grace period expiring, and no monthly payment due. Participation rates remain far below potential, not because the outcomes are inferior, but in part because the institutional infrastructure of American education actively routes students toward 4-year programs that generate tuition revenue for institutions and origination fees for lenders, before the student has any basis for evaluating whether the financial trade is sound. The Lehrzeit Fund that Ezekiel documented was, in structural terms, a community-funded apprenticeship system operating 2 centuries before the Department of Labor formalized the concept. The outcomes it produced were not comparable to what the EI, modern university system, produces. They were superior, measured in debt carried, assets held, and financial independence achieved at the start of adult life. I am not selling anything. No program, no guide, no course. What I am asking you to do is look at the children in your life, your own or those close to you, and ask one honest question. What financial foundation will exist for them at the moment they need to be independent? Not what credential they will hold. Not what institution's name will appear on a piece of paper. What foundation? Land, skills, capital, a position in a community of economic accountability. Those are the things Ezekiel began building for his children at birth, recorded in ink and ledger columns that have now outlasted every financial institution that operated in Lancaster County during his lifetime. Those are the things his records show delivered, on schedule, to each of his children, without a single dollar of debt attached, without a single institution collecting interest on the transfer, and without a single child entering adulthood owing more than they owned. Leave one word in the comments, the skill you wish someone had taught you before you turned 18, instead of pointing you toward a loan application. I read everyone. That word tells me where this conversation actually needs to go, because the Leerzeit system and the Mitgift transfer are one side of what Ezekiel documented across those 44 years. The other side, the one recorded in the final section of that third ledger, is about what his community did to protect everything they built, from the one force that silently destroys the savings of every generation that ignores it. That story is already waiting, and it makes this one look like the first chapter.